When was the last time you truly looked at yourself? Not just your reflection, but the person behind the eyes, and felt a sense of respect, pride, or even love. Not the mask you show the world, not the achievements you stack to impress others, but the real you, raw and unfiltered. Most people can't answer that question honestly, and that's why no amount of praise, attention, or affection ever feels enough. Here's the unvarnished truth. The most important relationship you will ever cultivate isn't with your partner, your friends, or your family. It's with yourself. Before the likes, before the validation, before the approval from anyone else, there's only you, and how you treat yourself sets the tone for everything else in your life. You can climb the career ladder, chase love, and collect accomplishments, but if you're not aligned with yourself, none of it will ever feel lasting. Self-love isn't a luxury, it's the foundation of survival. It's the art of defending your energy, setting unshakable boundaries, and standing by yourself even when the world doubts your worth. In this episode, you'll learn how to stop abandoning yourself, how to build an unbreakable inner fortress of confidence and calm, and how to love yourself in a way that transforms every part of your life. Because the moment you truly commit to yourself, everything else falls into place. 1. Cultivating a deep, loving connection with yourself. When was the last time you genuinely felt proud of who you are? Not for what you've accomplished or the accolades you've earned, but simply for the person you are at your core. Most people rarely consider this, which is why they spend their lives seeking love from others while overlooking the most crucial relationship they will ever have, the one they share with themselves. You can never escape yourself. No matter where life takes you, who surrounds you, or what you're doing, you carry yourself along. And if that inner relationship is fractured, nothing else will ever feel completely right. The reality is this: self-love does not occur by chance. It isn't something that suddenly appears when circumstances are perfect. Rather, it is intentionally cultivated, much like any meaningful relationship, with patience, attention, and deliberate effort. Think about the way you care for someone you love deeply. You listen to them attentively. You show them respect. You extend patience when they stumble. You forgive their missteps. Now reflect honestly, do you extend that same level of care to yourself? The hard truth is that most people treat themselves far more harshly than they would anyone they truly love. They endlessly replay their failures. They berate themselves for small mistakes. They set impossibly high expectations for themselves while offering limitless understanding to everyone else. To foster a loving relationship with yourself, you must transform the way you speak to yourself. Replace phrases like, "I can't believe I did that," with, "I am learning and growing." Change. "I'm not good enough," into, "I am still evolving into the person I want to become." The words you repeat shape your self-perception, and your mind absorbs and believes them. Yet self-love extends beyond the power of positive self-talk. It also manifests in the promises you keep to yourself. Consider this. If a friend constantly broke their word, canceled plans, and failed to show up when needed, would you trust them? Likely not. And yet many of us treat ourselves in exactly this way. We vow to begin exercising and then skip it. We decide to cut ties with toxic people and later allow them back in. Each broken promise erodes self-respect. Rebuilding it requires honoring even the smallest commitments, rising when you said you would, completing the tasks you start, upholding the boundaries you establish. Another vital aspect of this relationship is spending intentional, meaningful time alone, not mindlessly scrolling, not numbing yourself with constant noise, but truly being present with yourself. This can feel uncomfortable because solitude removes the distractions that often shield you from your thoughts. However, the truth is you cannot truly love someone you don't understand, and you cannot fully know yourself without spending quality time in your own presence. Go for a walk without headphones. Take yourself out for a meal, sit in stillness, and ask yourself what you genuinely desire from life. And just like in any other deep relationship, forgiveness is indispensable. You cannot cultivate love without it. This means releasing the mistakes you have been punishing yourself for, not pretending they were acceptable, but deciding that they will no longer control you. Each act of self-forgiveness creates space for growth, replacing guilt with possibility. Over time, these practices fundamentally transform how you experience life. You begin to feel supported from within. You stop seeking validation from those incapable of giving it. You cease settling for less than you deserve. And something remarkable occurs. You start moving through life with a quiet, unshakable confidence. You communicate more clearly, walk with greater purpose, and no longer feel compelled to justify your worth to anyone. A loving relationship with yourself is the bedrock upon which all other relationships are built. When you respect yourself, you naturally command respect from others. When you value yourself, you no longer allow people to treat you as disposable. And when you truly love yourself, you will never again beg for the kind of love that you are already capable of giving yourself, freely and abundantly. 2. Why true happiness springs from self-love. What if I told you that every moment of joy you've ever experienced, every small burst of happiness, every peaceful sigh, has always been filtered through the lens of how you see yourself? Pause and consider this. Two people can exist in the exact same circumstances, yet one feels deeply content, while the other feels perpetually dissatisfied. The difference isn't chance, luck, or fate, it's self-love. Without it, happiness is always fleeting, fragile, and dependent on circumstances or the actions of others. We are constantly told that happiness comes from achievements, from relationships, or from material possessions. Get the promotion, find the perfect partner, buy the dream home, and only then will you finally feel complete. And yes, these things can create excitement, but without self-love, the happiness they provide fades quickly, leaving you chasing the next goal, hoping it will finally fill the emptiness inside. And it never truly does. Why? Because happiness rooted in external things is like building a house on sand. The moment those things change, and they inevitably will, the structure collapses. Self-love, however, is solid ground. It is the foundation that makes happiness enduring and stable. When you truly value yourself, you stop waiting for permission to feel good about your life. You stop seeking validation from others before allowing yourself to be happy. It is like switching on an internal light that no one else can ever turn off. Even when life challenges you, as it inevitably will, you retain a quiet stability, a steadfast confidence that you are enough, no matter what. Here's the truth. Most people avoid cultivating self-love because it demands unlearning years of conditioning. From a young age, many of us are taught that our worth depends on our achievements, our appearance, or how much we please those around us. We are rewarded for conforming, for meeting expectations, for being good in the eyes of others. Over time, this creates a dangerous habit. We start outsourcing our happiness. We forget that we have the power to give it to ourselves without needing anyone's approval. True happiness begins when you reverse this pattern. It begins the moment you wake up and say, I don't need today to go perfectly in order to feel good about myself. It begins when you can sit alone and still feel complete. It begins when you can receive love from others without relying on it to survive emotionally. Self-love doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you free. It allows you to relish the highs without clinging to them and endure the lows without falling apart. Here's the beauty of it. When your happiness originates from self-love, everything else in life transforms. Your relationships flourish because you are no longer entering them from need or desperation. You can love others fully without losing yourself in them. Your work becomes more meaningful because you aren't constantly chasing recognition. You do it because it aligns with your values. Even leisure time becomes richer because you are no longer trying to escape yourself. You are genuinely enjoying being who you are. The mistake most people make is believing they can bypass self-love and jump straight to happiness. It is like planting flowers in toxic soil. They may bloom briefly, but they cannot endure. Self-love is the soil. It is what allows joy to be sustainable. Without it, you remain at the mercy of circumstances. With it, you become unshakable. And perhaps the most inspiring part, self-love is something you can begin cultivating right now. Today, in small, deliberate ways, by speaking kindly to yourself, honoring your needs without guilt, and setting boundaries that protect your energy. Each time you do these things, you reinforce the foundation of your inner happiness. It stops being something you chase and instead becomes something you live moment by moment, fully and freely. 3. How to set boundaries without guilt or fear. Why is it that the very moment we attempt to protect our time, our energy, or our peace, guilt creeps in? Why do so many of us say yes when every fiber of our being is screaming no? The answer is simple, yet uncomfortable to accept. We've been conditioned to believe that putting ourselves first is selfish, and so we sacrifice our own well-being for the comfort of others, thinking this makes us good people, when in reality, it only leaves us exhausted, resentful, and disconnected from ourselves. Boundaries are not walls that isolate you. They are doors you have every right to open and close according to what is healthy and necessary for you. Without them, life quickly descends into chaos. People begin expecting more than you can give, and in turn, you start giving more than you can handle. Over time, you lose sight of yourself. You become so focused on meeting everyone else's needs that you forget you have your own. And here's the harsh truth. The more you give without boundaries, the less people value what you offer. Think about it. The friend who is always available at any hour, the coworker who never says no, the family member who constantly sacrifices their own plans, these individuals are rarely respected more because of their constant availability. In fact, they are often taken for granted. Boundaries do not push people away. On the contrary, they teach others how to treat you. That guilt you feel when setting a boundary is not proof you're doing something wrong. It's proof that you are breaking an old pattern, and that uncomfortable feeling is simply your mind adjusting to a new way of living. We are programmed to believe that our worth is determined by how much we give. So when you start protecting yourself, it may feel like you're taking something away from others. But in reality, you are giving them something far more valuable. The best version of yourself, not the drained, resentful, or depleted version. Setting boundaries also requires being okay with disappointing people. You cannot live a life rooted in self-respect while simultaneously trying to please everyone. If someone's love or respect for you depends on you overextending yourself, then that love or respect isn't genuine. It's control and dependence masquerading as affection. A person who truly cares for you will not punish you for having limits. Here's the truth. Boundaries don't only protect your time, they protect your identity. Without them, you will continue to say yes to things you don't want, until you are living a life that doesn't feel like your own. And when you lose touch with who you truly are, self-love becomes impossible. You cannot love a version of yourself that constantly betrays your own needs. Practical boundaries can be simple, not answering calls after a certain hour, saying no to events that drain you, refusing to engage in toxic conversations, or taking time for yourself even if others do not understand. The key is consistency. A boundary you set but frequently break isn't a boundary. It's merely a suggestion. The more you practice setting and honoring your boundaries, the more natural it becomes, and something remarkable happens. Your guilt starts to fade. You begin to recognize that the people who truly matter respect your limits, and the ones who do not were only in your life because you had none. You stop feeling guilty for protecting your peace because you finally understand it is the only way to live authentically. In the end, boundaries are tangible acts of self-love. They communicate, I value myself enough to protect what matters most to me. When you live this way, your relationships improve. You begin attracting people who respect you for who you are, not for how much you can give without limits. And most importantly, you stop betraying yourself for the sake of others, and you start building a life that feels right, not just one that looks right. 4. Harnessing the power of saying no to protect your energy. When was the last time you confidently said no without providing an excuse? Without apologizing, without feeling like you had to justify your decision in any way? For most people, that kind of moment is extremely rare. We live in a culture that glorifies busyness over balance, and that constantly equates being available to everyone with being valuable. But the reality is this: every single time you say yes to something that drains your energy, you are silently saying no to yourself. Over time, those stolen moments, that drained energy, and that quietly accumulating resentment will end up costing you far more than you realize. Saying no is not about rejecting people. It is about protecting the most precious and non-renewable resource you possess, your energy. You can always earn more money. You can rebuild relationships that matter. But once your energy is gone, so is your capacity to show up fully and authentically in every area of life. Without it, you cannot create, you cannot connect meaningfully, and you cannot genuinely enjoy the achievements and experiences you have worked so hard to build. Energy is your life force, and if you fail to guard it vigilantly, the world will take it without hesitation. The problem is that most people are convinced that saying no will make them appear selfish, rude, or unkind. They imagine others labeling them as difficult, uncaring, or ungrateful. But here is the truth. The people who genuinely respect you will also respect your no. It is only the people who benefit from your lack of boundaries who attempt to make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. And that, in itself, is the clearest sign that your no was entirely necessary. Think of your energy as a bank account. Every commitment you take on, every conversation you enter, every problem you absorb, each one is a withdrawal. If you never say no, eventually you will experience emotional bankruptcy. The symptoms manifest as burnout, resentment, loss of motivation, and even physical illness. Your body and mind are constantly signaling when you are giving too much, but ignoring those warnings will cost you far more than you anticipate. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of guarding the inner citadel, the fortress of your mind and your soul. Not every battle is worth fighting, and not every invitation is worth accepting. Saying no is your way of closing the gate before an unnecessary siege depletes your strength entirely. Here's the challenge. The first few times you say no, it will feel awkward and uncomfortable. You have been conditioned to believe that your worth is directly tied to how much you do for others. Breaking that pattern means confronting the discomfort of change. That temporary unease is not a sign you are doing something wrong. It is proof that you are reclaiming control over your life. Practical steps to begin. Before you agree to anything, pause and ask yourself these questions. Does this align with my current priorities? Will this energize me or deplete me? If I say yes, what will I have to sacrifice in return? These questions redirect your focus from pleasing others to protecting yourself. Over time, you will realize something profound. The world does not collapse when you say no. The people who truly value you adjust. The people who do not, they quietly fade away, leaving space for healthier, more balanced relationships to grow. When you start saying no with confidence, something shifts inside you. You begin to trust yourself more deeply. You stop over-explaining every decision. You stop feeling obligated to give everyone unlimited access to your time and energy, and you begin making decisions that leave you feeling lighter, not weighed down. Ultimately, saying no is one of the purest forms of self-love in action. It communicates, I respect my time, my health, and my peace enough to protect them fiercely. And when you live this way, you realize you are not shutting people out. You are carefully choosing who and what gets to occupy space in your life. You are not rejecting the world. You are simply ensuring that you never reject yourself in the process. 5. The courage to let go of people who don't value you. How many times have you stayed in someone's life long after they stopped treating you like you truly matter? How many times have you rationalized their behavior, convinced yourself they will change, or told yourself that maybe you are expecting too much? Here is the uncomfortable truth. Every single moment spent holding on to people who do not value you is a moment stolen from yourself, your growth and your peace. Letting go is difficult, not because you fail to see that the person is harmful or unhelpful, but because your heart clings to the idea of them, to memories, to the potential they once had, and to the way they made you feel in a past moment of connection. You hold on, hoping that they will return to that previous version of themselves, while ignoring the reality that the present version is completely different from what you once cherished. This is the exact point where self-love and self-respect intersect. You cannot claim to value yourself if you continue to invest your energy, attention, and care into someone who has consistently demonstrated through their actions that they do not value you. The truth is this: when someone genuinely values you, you do not have to question it. You do not have to decode mixed signals, chase them for attention, or shrink yourself to fit into their comfort zone. Their respect, care, and presence are unwavering. Anything less is not love, it is tolerance, convenience, or habit. The Stoics emphasize the importance of detachment. Epictetus taught that our suffering does not come from loss itself, but from our attachment to the illusion of control over it. We believe that if we try harder, give more, or change ourselves enough, we can make someone finally see our worth. But the undeniable truth is this: your worth is not up for negotiation. It exists, whether anyone else recognizes it or not. Letting go of people who do not value you is not about anger, revenge, or spite. It is about creating space for relationships that nourish, encourage, and uplift you, instead of draining your energy and attention. It is about reclaiming the time, space, and energy you deserve to invest in your own growth, joy, and peace. Yes, initially there may be a void, a quiet space where their chaos once resided. But in that silence, something extraordinary happens. You start to hear yourself again. One of life's most difficult lessons is realizing that some people are only meant to occupy a chapter in your story, not the entire narrative. Holding on past their exit point does not keep the story alive. It keeps you trapped in a plot that goes nowhere. The longer you linger, the more you delay the chapters you truly deserve. Practically speaking, letting go involves more than physical distance. It requires emotional detachment. It means refraining from stalking their social media, replaying old conversations, or romanticizing past interactions to make them appear better than they truly were. It is about choosing reality over nostalgia, truth over illusion, and clarity over fantasy. You will know you have truly let go when you no longer need closure from them because you have given it to yourself. When you can think of them without bitterness, resentment, or longing, and without needing an apology that may never come, you will be free. The outcome of letting go is profound. You reclaim your time, mental space, and emotional bandwidth. You stop reacting to their moods, behaviors, and decisions. You discover opportunities, friendships, and experiences previously invisible. You rebuild your sense of self without their voice echoing in your mind. Letting go is a profound act of strength, not weakness. It declares, I refuse to settle for being an option when I know I am a priority. While the process may cause temporary pain, it protects you from a lifetime of disappointment, disrespect, and emotional exhaustion. You can deeply love someone while acknowledging that they are not good for you. You can remain grateful for what they taught you while still walking away. Self-love is the wisdom to know when to stop watering a dead plant, no matter how beautiful it once was. In the end, letting go is never about losing someone. It is about finding yourself again. And that is a trade worth making every single time, without exception. 6. How to masterfully silence your inner critic. What if I told you that the loudest, most damaging voice you will ever hear in your life does not come from an enemy, a rival, or even someone who dislikes you? It comes from within. That persistent voice in your head, the one that tells you you are not good enough, that you will fail, that you should not even bother attempting. This is your inner critic. And if you do not learn how to manage, control, and guide it, it will sabotage every step forward you attempt to take. The paradox is that the inner critic often masquerades as helpful. It uses phrases like, be realistic, don't embarrass yourself, or you are not ready yet. But beneath those seemingly practical words is fear. Fear of change, fear of risk, fear of stepping into the unknown. That voice convinces you to stay small, to play safe, and to remain inside a box where nothing new can harm you, but also where nothing new can grow you. The Stoics taught a different perspective. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Your inner critic is not an external force. It is part of your mind. And if you have power over your mind, you can absolutely exercise control over the critic." Most of us, however, never challenge it. We take its words as immutable truth rather than subjective opinion, forgetting that a thought appearing does not make it inherently valid. One of the most transformative practices is learning to separate yourself from your thoughts. Imagine them as clouds drifting across the sky. You are not the clouds. You are the sky itself. The critic may appear, but you do not have to hold on to it. You can watch it come and go without giving it the authority to define your reality. Silencing your inner critic does not mean pretending it does not exist. In fact, trying to ignore it entirely often amplifies it. Instead, confront it directly. Ask yourself, is this thought actually true? Is there evidence to support it? Or is this fear disguising itself as logic? More often than not, you will discover that the critic's words collapse under the weight of reality and reason. Another highly effective method is replacing self-criticism with self-instruction. Instead of saying, "I cannot do this," shift your language to, "I do not know how to do this yet, but I can learn." The critic closes doors. Self-instruction opens them. It shifts your focus from limitations to your true potential. It is also important to understand where the inner critic learned its voice. Often it is the echo of a parent's harsh words, a teacher's doubts, or a past failure that left a lasting impression. Recognizing its origins allows you to stop taking it personally. You begin to see it for what it truly is, a learned pattern, not an absolute truth. Self-love plays an enormous role in this process. When you genuinely value yourself, you will no longer tolerate being spoken to, even by your own mind, in ways you would never allow from another person. You begin replacing the inner critic with an inner coach, someone who identifies areas for growth without tearing you down in the process. The critic will never fully disappear. It is part of being human, but it can be trained. With consistent practice, conscious effort, and patience, you can turn its volume down so low that it becomes mere background noise instead of the dominant voice in your life. Practical steps include journaling to track patterns and challenge false beliefs, practicing mindfulness to catch the critic's voice as soon as it arises, surrounding yourself with supportive and truthful people, and taking consistent action because nothing proves the critic wrong more effectively than action itself. Remember this: the inner critic is not there to predict your future. It exists to protect your comfort zone. And comfort zones are where dreams go to die. Every time you silence that voice and move forward regardless, you affirm to yourself, "I am capable. I am worthy. I am allowed to take up space in this world." One day, when you reflect on everything you have accomplished, you will realize that the critic was never right. In that moment, its power over you will shatter completely. Until then, continue showing up. Continue speaking to yourself with courage, clarity, and conviction. And keep proving that you are far more than your doubts. 7. How self-care shapes and strengthens your self-worth. When was the last moment you genuinely and intentionally took care of yourself? Not merely in the physical sense, but also in the mental and emotional dimensions. Not simply eating when hunger strikes or sleeping when fatigue hits, but truly treating yourself as someone worth protecting, someone worth investing in, someone worth deeply loving. For far too many people, self-care has been reduced to nothing more than a catchy marketing slogan, something reserved for a spa day, or for moments when they feel utterly burned out. But authentic self-care is infinitely deeper than that. It is not a rare, occasional indulgence. It is, in fact, a daily affirmation and declaration of your inherent worth. Here is the reality. Genuine self-worth cannot exist without self-care. The two are fundamentally inseparable. When you habitually neglect your needs, you communicate a quiet, persistent message to yourself. I am not a priority. And as time passes, that subtle message gradually hardens into a core belief. You begin to accept less from others because you have already been sending yourself the message that you deserve less. However, when you consistently and consciously care for yourself, when you nourish your body with wholesome food, move it intentionally, allow it to rest fully, feed your mind with meaningful knowledge, and safeguard your emotional well-being, you reinforce a different internal truth. I matter. My well-being matters. My life matters. The Stoics grasped this concept, even if they never explicitly labeled it as modern self-care. Seneca stated, "No man has the power to have everything he wants, but he has the power not to want what he has not and cheerfully to employ what comes to him." Put simply, taking care of yourself is not about indulging in every fleeting desire or wish. Instead, it is about mastering the art of using the resources you already have to fortify your body, sharpen your intellect, and stabilize your emotions. True self-care rarely appears glamorous. Sometimes it means going to bed earlier instead of scrolling endlessly through your phone until 2 a.m. Other times, it involves cooking a nutritious meal instead of succumbing to the convenience of fast food. Occasionally, it requires politely declining an invitation to honor a night of quiet reflection. And at times, it entails having challenging, uncomfortable conversations that preserve and protect your mental space. One of the most profound effects of self-care is the trust it builds with yourself. Each time you make a decision that prioritizes your long-term well-being over momentary pleasure, you are demonstrating to yourself that you can be relied upon. Self-trust, in turn, becomes one of the most unshakable foundations of self-worth. You cannot feel confident and good about yourself if, deep down, you know that you repeatedly break promises made to your own body, mind, and soul. Imagine self-care as an investment account. Every nourishing meal, every focused workout, every full night of sleep, every dedicated moment of journaling or meditation represents a deposit into this account. Over time, these deposits accumulate and compound, resulting in confidence, resilience, and a profound, steady, unshakable sense of self-respect. Conversely, neglect can drain this account more quickly than you might ever realize. Skip enough deposits and the consequences become evident, not in dollars, but in depleted energy, disrupted mood, and diminished self-image. Another critical element to understand is that self-care is not only about what you actively do, it is also about what you consciously stop doing. Stop exposing yourself to toxic relationships that sap your energy. Stop overwhelming your schedule to the point where breathing feels impossible. Stop feeding your mind with relentless negativity through news, gossip, or social media. This is where self-care intersects directly with boundaries, because genuine self-care cannot exist while everything and everyone is allowed to invade and dominate your mental space. Here lies a paradox. By prioritizing your own care first, you actually have far more to give to others. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Those who claim that self-care is selfish have misunderstood its purpose entirely. Neglecting yourself is what truly renders you unreliable, exhausted, and resentful. Loving yourself enough to rest, recharge, and assertively say no when necessary makes you a stronger, more capable friend, partner, parent, and leader. Practical self-care does not demand enormous amounts of time or money. What it requires above all is consistency. 10 minutes of daily meditation far surpasses a single hour-long session once a month. Preparing one healthy meal is infinitely more beneficial than perpetually postponing it with a next Monday forever mindset. Taking a 20-minute walk in nature can benefit your mental state far more profoundly than hours of mindless scrolling. Small daily acts of self-respect compound in ways that one-off gestures never can. Ask yourself, if someone could observe every choice you make regarding your health, energy, and peace of mind, would they be able to see that you truly love yourself? If the answer is no, then you have found exactly where to begin. Self-care is not a reward to be earned. It is the essential foundation that enables continued growth, forward momentum, and the cultivation of the person you aspire to become. The moment you commit to treating your body as worthy of nourishment, your mind as worthy of protection, and your heart as worthy of guarding, you step fully into a new dimension of self-worth. Once you experience this, you will never again tolerate a life in which you abandon yourself in an effort to please others. 8. Mastering the art of enjoying your own company when. Was the last time you truly spent time alone and genuinely enjoyed it? Not distracted by your phone, not numbing the silence with endless background noise, not rushing to fill every empty moment with someone else's presence, but fully alone, at peace, and completely comfortable within your own skin. For many people, the very idea of being alone feels uncomfortable, even frightening. They treat solitude as though it were a punishment, a state to escape from as quickly as possible. Yet the reality is this: learning to enjoy your own company is one of the most liberating and empowering forms of freedom you can ever experience. Here's why this matters so deeply. When you rely on constant company validation or approval from others to feel okay, you have surrendered your emotional stability to forces beyond your control. Your peace of mind becomes conditional on the attention, recognition, or presence of other people, over which you have no ultimate authority. But when you learn to be fully present with yourself, to truly appreciate your own thoughts, your own activities, and your own presence, you reclaim control over your inner state. Your happiness ceases to be dependent on the unpredictable actions of others. Marcus Aurelius wisely wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." The Stoics understood that the richest, most unshakable source of peace is not located in any external environment, but within the ability to be still and present with yourself. And yet, most of us fill every quiet moment with noise, whether literal or digital, because silence forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our habits, our fears, and our desires. Facing these truths, however, is precisely how we grow. Learning to enjoy your own company does not equate to isolation. It is not about withdrawing from human connection or rejecting love, friendship, or meaningful relationships. Instead, it is about removing the sense of neediness that makes you cling to others out of fear, rather than choosing to be with them out of genuine desire. When you master the ability to be alone without feeling lonely, your relationships transform in profound ways. You no longer enter them from a place of lack. You stop expecting other people to fill gaps in your self-worth that only you can supply. The process begins in small, deliberate steps. Perhaps it is taking a walk without headphones, simply listening to your own thoughts. Perhaps it is treating yourself to a meal alone and resisting the urge to scroll endlessly on your phone. It might involve spending an evening reading, journaling, or reflecting, instead of defaulting to social media or mindless entertainment. Initially, these experiences may feel strange or awkward. That is entirely normal. Growth almost always feels uncomfortable before it feels natural. The key is to reframe your perspective. Time spent alone is not empty space. It is a blank canvas. It is an opportunity to reflect, to plan, to create, or simply to rest. It is a chance to reconnect with neglected passions, hobbies, and interests. It is a space to process your emotions without being influenced by external voices. In doing so, you begin to recognize yourself not as someone who constantly requires distraction, but as someone capable of offering themselves genuine, independent fulfillment. There is also a deeper psychological transformation that occurs when you learn to enjoy your own company. You begin to trust yourself more profoundly. Consider this. If you cannot tolerate being alone with your own thoughts, how can you rely on your own judgment? How can you trust your own capacity to navigate challenges when life inevitably becomes difficult? By embracing solitude, you cultivate that trust. You come to understand that you can handle your emotions, solve your problems independently, and serve as your own source of comfort and stability. Another benefit of being able to enjoy your own company is clarity. When you are constantly surrounded by noise, whether literal noise from conversations, notifications, and media, or the mental noise of other people's opinions, it is nearly impossible to hear your own inner voice. But in moments of solitude, the static fades. You gain clarity about your life, your goals, and your desires. You can distinguish between what you truly want and what you have been conditioned to want. This clarity strengthens your decisions, makes you more decisive, and shields you from manipulation or undue influence. Self-love and solitude are deeply intertwined. The more you value yourself, the more you will value and protect your time alone. The more you value your own company, the less you tolerate situations or people that drain your energy. This creates a cycle of empowerment and self-respect that grows stronger with each intentional act of solitude. Once this cycle begins, it is difficult to break. If being alone still makes you uneasy, start by asking yourself why. Is it because you dislike your own thoughts? Is it because your identity has become so entangled with others that you feel lost without them? Or is it simply because you were never taught that your own presence by itself is enough? Whatever the underlying reason, it can be unlearned. It can be replaced with a quiet, steadfast confidence that comes from knowing you are your own best companion. Here is the ultimate truth. If you cultivate the ability to genuinely enjoy your own company, you will never experience true loneliness again. People may come and go, circumstances may shift, but you will always possess a consistent, reliable source of inner peace. That is a power no one else can ever take from you, a foundation for contentment, resilience, and authentic happiness that remains completely within your control. 9. freeing yourself from the need for external approval, why do we give other people's opinions so much power over how we feel? Why is it that a single compliment can lift our mood for the entire day, yet one piece of criticism can ruin our week completely? If you have ever found yourself replaying someone's negative remark repeatedly in your mind, or constantly refreshing your phone just to see who liked your post, you already understand the trap that is external validation. In the moment, it feels good, like a quick surge of dopamine, yet it also creates dependency. And dependency in its essence is weakness. Here is the difficult truth. If your self-worth relies on the approval of other people, you are constructing your foundation on sand, on an unstable and fragile base. The instant their opinions change, and inevitably they always do, your confidence will crumble. One day they praise you, the next day they criticize you, and your emotional state swings according to their mood. That is not freedom. That is emotional slavery. The Stoics understood this danger thousands of years ago. Epictetus wisely said, "If you wish to be free, do not concern yourself with what others think of you." This is not about arrogance, and it is certainly not about pretending that you do not care. It is about recognizing that other people's opinions are merely opinions. They are shaped by their own experiences, by their biases, by their current moods, and even by their insecurities. None of these factors has the right to determine your worth or control your self-perception. When you live for external validation, you hand over the keys to your happiness. You are effectively saying to the world, "You get to determine how I feel about myself." That is a dangerous exchange, because most people are far too preoccupied with their own struggles to see you as you truly are. They see fragments of your being. They notice only what is convenient or easy for them to see. Sometimes they even project their own fears, doubts, or past failures onto you. The first step to releasing the need for approval is becoming aware of where it manifests in your life. Perhaps it appears in the way you dress, not because it makes you feel confident, but because you are seeking compliments. Maybe it shows in the career path you have chosen, because it looked impressive to others, even if it leaves you feeling empty inside. Perhaps it influences how you speak, the way you present yourself, or the way you filter your personality, always afraid of judgment. Once you identify these patterns, you can start replacing them with self-generated validation. This means measuring your value by your own standards, by the promises you keep to yourself, by the skills you develop, and by the principles you live by. It is the difference between saying, "I feel good because they like me," and saying, "I feel good because I lived with integrity today." One effective exercise is detaching your actions from their reception by others. If you create something, a piece of art, a work project, or a personal goal, ask yourself, would I still be proud of this if no one ever saw it? If the answer is yes, you are on the right path. You are doing it for yourself, not for applause or recognition. Another key benefit of freeing yourself from this need is emotional stability. When your confidence comes from within, it is not shaken by criticism, nor inflated by praise. You can receive feedback without letting it define you. You can hear a no without collapsing. You can celebrate a yes without becoming addicted to it. You stay grounded, centered, calm in success, and calm in failure. This does not mean you ignore others entirely. Healthy feedback is invaluable. We learn and grow from perspectives outside of ourselves. However, there is a crucial difference between considering an opinion and depending on it to feel worthy. You must be able to weigh advice against your own principles, rather than swallowing it completely out of fear of disapproval. Releasing the need for external validation also strengthens your relationships. When you no longer need someone to constantly reassure you, you remove undue pressure from your connections. People can enjoy your presence without feeling responsible for holding up your self-esteem. In return, you can be more authentic, more present, and less performative, because you are no longer living to gain approval. The real transformation happens when you begin trusting your own voice more than the noise around you. This does not mean you will never care what others think. We are human, and all of us want to be liked. But it does mean that your sense of worth will no longer fluctuate like a stock price, rising and falling according to the reactions of other people. You will still value connection, yet you will not be enslaved by it. External validation is inherently unstable because people themselves are unstable. Their moods shift, their interests change, and their attention wanders. If you base your identity on such an unreliable source, you will spend your life chasing something that can never be held. But if you base it on your own standards, your own effort, and your personal growth, it becomes solid, steadfast, and unshakable. So ask yourself this: if no one ever applauded your efforts again, would you still do what you are doing? Would you continue to pursue your dreams, live according to your values, and fight for your goals? If the answer is no, it is time to reframe your motivation. Because the only applause that truly matters is the one you give yourself when you know, without doubt, that you have lived a day in full alignment with the person you aspire to be, the person you are determined to become, and the life you are committed to creating. 10. Mastering self-forgiveness to move forward in life. How many nights have you lain awake, endlessly replaying your mistakes in your mind like a broken record on repeat? How many times have you whispered to yourself, "If only I could go back and do it differently"? Each of us carries moments we wish we could erase, moments we regret, things we said in anger, opportunities we let slip by, decisions made from fear rather than courage. And yet, no matter how much we wish it, the past is unchangeable. It is etched in stone, permanent and immutable. What we do have control over, however, is how we relate to it, how we interpret it, and how we choose to move forward. Self-forgiveness is one of the most challenging skills to master, not because it is inherently complicated, but because it requires facing yourself without excuses, without distraction, and without trying to soften the truth. It requires looking directly at your flaws, your failures, and your regrets, not to punish yourself further, but to release yourself from the prison of constant self-judgment. The Stoics understood this principle deeply. Seneca once wrote that the greatest obstacle to living fully is the expectation of tomorrow. When we spend our lives trapped in the mistakes of yesterday, we rob ourselves of the potential and possibilities available in today. The truth is that holding on to guilt often feels productive in a strange and deceptive way. We tell ourselves that by feeling bad, by mentally punishing ourselves, we are somehow paying for what we did. Yet guilt accomplishes nothing. It does not undo the past, nor does it repair the harm caused. All it does is chain us to a moment that no longer exists, keeping us stuck, heavy, and unable to fully live. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is not about pretending the mistake never happened. True forgiveness is about learning the lesson so thoroughly that you never need to repeat it again. Forgiving yourself begins with honesty. No sugarcoating, no mental gymnastics to cast yourself as the hero of your story. You acknowledge the wrong. You accept your role in it. You confront the discomfort head-on. This is not weakness. It is the ultimate act of courage. Most people avoid this step because it is painful, because facing ourselves directly forces us to see the parts we wish we could hide. But pain is the gateway to growth. By taking full responsibility, we remove the need to hide, to distract ourselves, or to make excuses. Once you have acknowledged the truth, the next essential step is self-compassion. And this is not simply some feel-good concept or soft advice. It is a practical necessity. Think about it. If you are constantly berating yourself, how can you expect to have the energy, clarity, and emotional bandwidth to make better choices? You would never tell a friend that they are a complete failure every single day and expect them to thrive. Yet we do this to ourselves habitually, often without realizing the deep and cumulative damage it causes. Self-compassion means speaking to yourself as you would speak to someone you deeply care about, someone who is trying, learning, and inherently deserving of a second chance. The Stoics would also remind us that mistakes are a fundamental part of the human condition. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, 'The people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant.'" He was describing the behavior of others. Yet the principle applies inwardly as well. We too make mistakes because we are still learning, still growing. If we can extend understanding to strangers, why deny that same grace to ourselves? Forgiveness also demands action. If your mistake has caused harm to someone else, take responsibility and make amends wherever possible. Offer a sincere apology, not to erase your guilt, but to honor the other person's experience. If the damage cannot be undone, commit to making different choices moving forward. This transforms forgiveness from a passive feeling into an active principle that guides your life. Perhaps the hardest part of self-forgiveness is releasing the identity that your mistake gave you. Often we hold on to guilt because it has become familiar. We define ourselves by the failure. I am the person who ruined that relationship. I am the one who wasted those years. But you are not a single moment, a single error, or a single misstep. You are a collection of choices, actions, and lived experiences, and you are still writing the story of your life. The past chapter may be closed, but the pen is still in your hand. When you finally release the heavy weight of self-condemnation, you create space for possibility. You can focus on building your future instead of endlessly repairing the past. You can take risks again, free from the belief that one misstep defines your entire worth. Most importantly, you can finally be present in your life. Self-forgiveness is not about erasing the past. It is about no longer allowing it to own you, no longer letting it dictate your choices or your peace of mind. So ask yourself, if a friend you loved made the same mistake you did, and they were genuinely trying to grow and improve, would you tell them to dwell in shame forever? Or would you urge them to stand up, carry forward what they have learned, and move forward with renewed strength and courage? That is precisely what you owe yourself. Not denial, not forgetting, but the grace, the permission, and the strength to keep going. The moment you choose to forgive yourself, you reclaim your power. You stop being defined by what you did in the past and begin being defined by the choices you make today and in the future. And that, above all, is the truest form of freedom. The most profound liberation you can ever experience in life. 11. Cultivating unshakable confidence. Through daily action. What if I told you that confidence is not something you are born with? And it is certainly not something that mysteriously appears one day out of nowhere? What if I told you that confidence is something you actively construct, brick by brick, through the small, sometimes tedious, often overlooked actions you take consistently, day after day? The truth is that the people you admire for their unwavering confidence are not fearless superheroes. They are not extraordinary beings immune to fear or doubt. Instead, they are ordinary people who have amassed enough proof over time to trust themselves to show up, face challenges, and do the work required. The problem for most people is that they wait to feel confident before they act. They believe, once I feel ready, I will take the leap, I will make the move, I will go for it. But that is not how the process works. You do not act because you feel confident. You feel confident because you act. Confidence is a natural byproduct, a side effect of keeping promises to yourself. Every time you say, I am going to do this, and then follow through, you lay another brick in the foundation of your self-belief. Think of it like this. Each action you take is a vote for the person you are becoming. When you procrastinate, avoid challenges, or break your own commitments, you cast a vote for doubt, for hesitation, for insecurity. But when you step forward, even when discomfort or fear is present, you cast a vote for confidence, for strength, for reliability. Over time, the majority wins. Your identity shifts. You no longer perceive yourself as someone who tries. You see yourself as someone who acts, someone who follows through, someone who delivers. The Stoics understood this truth intimately. Epictetus taught that if you wish to improve yourself, you must be willing to be thought foolish, clumsy, or even stupid by others. Why? Because growth demands action, and action often invites criticism or judgment from those who do not understand your process. You cannot build confidence if your main concern is how others perceive you. True confidence is constructed by focusing on the act itself, not on the recognition, approval, or applause it might bring. Consistency is the secret ingredient that transforms ordinary effort into unshakable confidence. Anyone can take action once, and it may feel empowering for a moment. But confidence is built when you know deep in your core that you can repeat that action again and again. It is easy to feel strong when motivation is high and the sun is shining, but it is far more revealing and far more valuable when you act on days when you are tired, when the world feels heavy, when every part of you wants to hide. Those are the moments when following through matters most. Because if you can keep your word during the storm, you will never doubt yourself in the sunshine. Let us be clear. building confidence does not mean succeeding at everything you attempt. In fact, some of the most profound growth comes from failing and discovering that you can survive it. Every time you rise after a setback, every time you get back up after stumbling, you reinforce the belief that you are resilient, adaptable, and capable. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Apply this wisdom to failure. The event itself does not define you, but the meaning you assign to it does. View failure as training, as feedback, as a stepping stone rather than a verdict, and your confidence will grow unshakable. Practical steps make this principle tangible. Begin with small, manageable actions and gradually scale them up. If you have broken trust with yourself in the past, start by setting micro-promises that you know you can keep. Wake up at the hour you committed to. Complete the task you have been procrastinating on. Attend the gym for just 20 minutes. These small, deliberate wins matter immensely because they prove to your mind and your soul that you are reliable. And reliability is the cornerstone of confidence. Keep your focus internal. Do not measure your worth by external validation, by likes, applause, or praise, all of which are fleeting and unreliable. True confidence emerges from the deep, unwavering knowledge that you did what you said you would do, whether or not anyone else noticed or approved. And here is the irony. When you build confidence from the inside out, others naturally take notice. People are drawn to those who move with certainty, who do not seek permission to exist, who act with purpose and clarity. But by the time that attention arrives, you will no longer be seeking their approval. You will already have cultivated your own. So ask yourself today, what is one action you have been avoiding because you do not yet feel ready? What would happen if you took that action before the confidence arrived? If you commit to repeating this process consistently, you will never need to search for confidence again. You will embody it. Confidence is not a gift that falls into your lap. It is a muscle, a skill, a capacity that you train rep by rep, day by day. Each effort, no matter how small, makes you stronger, more capable, and more unshakable. Build it through consistent action, and it will carry you further than you have ever imagined, propelling you to new heights and allowing you to face life with courage, clarity, and certainty. 12. Cultivating gratitude for your true self. When was the last time you truly paused, not to wish for what you do not yet have, but to fully recognize, acknowledge, and appreciate who you already are in this very moment? We live in a world that constantly trains us to notice what is missing. Social media, advertising, casual conversations, they all serve as reminders of the gap between where you are and where you think you should be. While growth and ambition are undeniably important, here is the paradox. You will never feel fully, deeply, and genuinely fulfilled until you learn to practice gratitude for yourself exactly as you are, in this very moment, without conditions or postponement. Gratitude for who you are does not mean pretending you are perfect. It does not mean ignoring your flaws or dismissing your mistakes. True gratitude is about recognizing your intrinsic worth without feeling that you must constantly earn it. It is about appreciating the battles you have fought, the storms you have survived, the challenges you faced, and the principles you held even when abandoning them would have been far easier. It is easy to admire others, their beauty, talents, and achievements. But how often do you take the time to admire yourself with the same intensity, with the same genuine enthusiasm, and without hesitation? Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Apply this wisdom to your own life. The poorest version of yourself is the one who cannot see your value unless it is reflected back through the eyes of someone else. The richest version is the one who can stand alone, look in the mirror, and declare, "I am enough." Not because I have achieved all my dreams, not because I have conquered every challenge, but because I have already proven my strength simply by existing, by showing up, by enduring life's trials, and by continuing to persevere in the face of difficulty. Gratitude for yourself transforms the way you live your life on every level. Without it, you approach the world from a perspective of lack, constantly comparing, always chasing, perpetually feeling behind. With it, you approach life from a place of abundance, Not because you possess everything, but because you are already equipped with everything you need to begin. From this foundation, growth becomes a conscious choice, a deliberate act, rather than a desperate attempt to fill a void created by self-doubt or comparison. Start with the simple, yet profoundly transformative act of acknowledgement. Every morning, write down 3 things you genuinely appreciate about yourself. Do not limit yourself to physical attributes or accomplishments. Include qualities of character, resilience, and integrity. Perhaps it is your ability to persevere when situations become difficult. Perhaps it is your loyalty to the people you love or your dedication to your principles. Perhaps it is your capacity to rise each time life knocks you down, refusing to let setbacks define your identity. These reminders are not vanity, they are fuel. They amplify the inner voice that says, "I am worthy," while quieting the one that whispers, "I am not enough." Gratitude for who you are also allows you to detach your identity from your mistakes and failures. Too often, people define themselves by their worst moments, replaying regrets until those errors become intertwined with their self-image. But you are not a single misstep, just as a tree is not defined by one dead branch. Gratitude shifts your attention from scars and shortcomings to growth, resilience, and potential. The Stoics understood the power of perspective. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to notice the good that already exists in his life, rather than being consumed by what is absent. This is not complacency, it is clarity. Improvement and self-growth become far more effective when rooted in self-respect and gratitude, rather than self-loathing and criticism. Another profound benefit of practicing gratitude is emotional resilience. When you are genuinely grateful for who you are, external criticism loses its power to destabilize you. Negative opinions may still come, but they no longer penetrate your core because your sense of self-worth is firmly grounded and not negotiable. You recognize your strengths, acknowledge your weaknesses, and hold both without shame. This is the essence of emotional resilience, the ability to remain calm, centered, and strong regardless of external turbulence or judgment. Of course, developing this mindset requires consistent practice. We are conditioned to focus on the negative, to dwell on the 10 things we dislike about ourselves, rather than the hundreds we do right. Gratitude reverses that focus. The more you cultivate it, the more natural it becomes. Soon, you will find yourself pausing in quiet moments and thinking, "I am proud of the person I am becoming." That is the unmistakable sign that a real and profound internal shift has taken place. So today, instead of measuring yourself against the curated highlight reels of others, measure yourself against the person you used to be. Recognize the growth, no matter how small. Appreciate the resilience, even if it has gone unnoticed. Celebrate the victories, even the ones no one else acknowledged, because they still mattered immensely. Here is the truth. You will never truly love yourself if you are always postponing that love until you become better, until you achieve some arbitrary goal, or until some future version of yourself finally arrives. Gratitude teaches you to love yourself now, in motion, imperfect, and evolving, and that love becomes the foundation for every other success you will ever create. At the end of the day, everything we have discussed boils down to one fundamental principle. The world treats you the way you treat yourself. If you neglect your needs, others will mirror that neglect. If you cross your own boundaries, others will follow suit. But when you set the standard, protect your energy, and prioritize valuing yourself above all else, you teach the world exactly how you deserve to be treated. Loving yourself more than anyone else does not mean you cease to love others. It means you love from a place of strength, clarity, and abundance, rather than neediness or desperation. It means your happiness is rooted in an unshakable foundation, entirely self-sourced, impervious to external forces. The Stoics understood this principle profoundly. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Mastery begins with self-love, the disciplined, unwavering, and deeply rooted kind of love that grows from gratitude for who you already are. So here is my challenge to you. Starting today, stop waiting for permission to love yourself. Stop postponing it until you achieve some goal, lose the weight, land the job, or find the perfect relationship. Love yourself now in the middle of the chaos, with your imperfections, with your scars. Because when you do, every goal you pursue, every relationship you build, and every connection you foster will emerge from a foundation of abundance rather than emptiness. Remember this: the relationship you cultivate with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. Treat yourself like someone you are proud to know. Protect yourself like someone you deeply care about. Invest in yourself like someone you trust and believe in completely. This is not arrogance, it is alignment, clarity, and empowerment. Now it is your turn to live it fully, unapologetically, and intentionally.